In this video, we're going to take a look at adding and subtracting fractions. So looking at a quick example, if I have 1/4 plus 2/4, and I want to get a visual of what this actually means, I would have two squares, both of them divided into fourths. 1/4 would mean I would have one of the four shaded in, and the other one, I would have two of the four shaded in. So looking at them together, I could move them over here, give me a total of 3/4 total. So I have a common denominator. My denominator stays the same. I am adding my numerators. So looking at a little bit different and slightly more complex problem. What if I had a 1/4 plus a 1/3? I do not have common denominators. So instead of looking at it like this, we may even want to think about switching this second one to be horizontal into thirds. Because now, if I think of 1/3, that's this much. 1/4 is this much. But if I would combine these two together, now I would have them in twelfths. So now, shading in 1/4 is 3/12, and shading in 1/4, or 1/3 rather, is 4/12. Now combining those together, 3/12 and 4/12 gives me a total of 7/12. So once I get my common denominator, I add my numerators. So how can we do that without actually making a diagram? Let's say I have a 1/3 plus a 2/5. If I thought about making a diagram and splitting one into 3 and the other one into 5, I would essentially be multiplying these two numbers together. So I could always find a common denominator by multiplying those two. That denominator is now 15. But in order to get my numerators figured out, I need to think, what number do I multiply 3 to get to 15? And that number is 5. So I need to multiply both numerator and denominator by 5. 5 divided by 5 is actually a giant 1, which then means I'm not changing the problem. I'm actually multiplying 1/3 by a 1. But my new numerator is now 5. Same thing with the other fraction. 5 times what number is 15? That answer is 3. So I multiply by 3/3. 2 times 3 is going to be 6. So I now have my fraction with the same denominator of 15. My common denominator is 15. Adding my numerators now is going to be 11. If I'm doing subtraction, it's done the same way. So let's say I take the numbers 3/7 minus 1/4. My common denominator is going to be 28. So for 3/7, I multiply by 4/4, giving me 12/28. My 1/4, I multiply by 7/7, giving me 7/28. Once I have a common denominator of 28, I now subtract my numerators. 12 minus 7 is going to end up equaling 5. The last example I'm going to go through is if I have 1/2 plus 1/8, I don't need to actually just multiply all the time my denominators to get 16, because there's actually a better common denominator, and that one is going to be 8. So for your common denominators, we're actually looking for multiples of these numbers. So my multiples of 2 are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and that's going to continue. My multiples of 8 are going to be 8, 16, 24, 32, and so on. I'm looking for the first one that matches, and in this case, it is 8. That is called the least common multiple, and is going to be our common denominator, or our least common denominator. So now, with a denominator of 8 and a denominator of 8, this fraction doesn't change, but the other fraction, you multiply by 4 over 4, so I get 4/8 plus 1/8 is now 5/8.